My name's Roger Hergert. I'm from Rock Valley College, and I'm the presider for the session. So the session that we're about to see is called Changing the College Culture, Shifting from DevEd Math Gateway to Gen Ed. And our speakers are all from College of Lake County. We have Donna Carlson, Natalia Casper, Laura Hobart, and Shyam Kurup. So take it away.
Thank you, Roger. I'm going to let the CLC team just really quick say their name and how long they've been at CLC so you can know the name with the face. So we'll start with Natalia.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to also do the PowerPoint at the same time. I'm Natalia Casper, and I've been at CLC for 23 years. Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Hobart, and I've been at College of Lake County for 20 years. Shyam?
Hi, I'm Shyam Kurup. I've been at the College of Lake County for 19 years. I'm also the current chair for our computer science department. Take it away, Donna.
And I'm Donna Carlson, and I've been teaching at the College of Lake County for 32 years. So I'm pretty old. All right, I'm going to start us off by giving us a brief history of the Gen Ed pathway concept at CLC. The math department at CLC was on a journey of self-reflection as we thought about how we can decrease the number of students taking developmental math. Our own data was showing us that many students were being placed into developmental math. You can see the pie chart where 49% of the math enrollment in the fall of 2018 was in developmental math. Success data showed us that many students were never getting out of developmental math successfully and were leaving the college without a credential. About 76% of the students that actually completed basic algebra never ended up taking a college level math course. We made this analogy of the traffic roundabout. Like we thought of our students as going around and around and around and never exiting onto the highway to meeting their educational goals and earning that life-changing credential. So we were trying to figure out what we can do about this problem. So Natalia has a poll question for you.
Okay, so our quick survey is we're going to be using Poll Everywhere, and there's two ways you can interact. The first way is by minimizing your Zoom window and using your computer. And there is now a link on the chat to go to that poll, or a second way, you can pull out your cell phones and text to 37607. And you wanted to type in the message part, Natalia Casp 891, and notice there is no R between the E and the 8. So hopefully you can see that on the screen. The question will appear on the next slide and we'll see some interaction, but I wanted to hold on this slide until we're ready. If everybody has a chance to log in to either the web or the chat or the text. Let me get to. So, and the instructions will still be at the top of this slide. Okay, what is your college implementing to reduce the number of students taking developmental math? So, it's going to take about 2 to 3 minutes for people to respond. See a lot of co-requisite models. Seeing a number of patterns here. All right, multiple measures. Excellent. And you can continue to respond, but thank you for sending us what your school has been doing. We are excited to share our response to this question, the same question in this presentation. And
All right. So in January of 2018, our provost brought to us the draft document that gave placement recommendations that was created by the chief academic officers. And I know you're all familiar with this because a version of that was later approved by the President's Council, and now it's legislated. So in January of 2018, when we saw the document, a little bit of a shock, as I'm sure it was for all of you, we looked at the two pieces of it. Really, we had the multiple measures. CLC had been using multiple measures for placement for quite a while, so that wasn't a huge leap for us. We had to add a few more of the items in the list, but for the most part, that was not an issue for us. What was an issue for us was the definition of college ready in math, and the courses that were listed in the college ready in math. So remember I'll go ahead and go to the next slide there. So we had to make some adjustments due to that definition with the cut scores on the SAT. So the next slide coming up will show you, this is our current placement that we use for our SAT score bands. So the purple, the 530, that's what was listed in the CAO document as the new cut score for being college ready in math. And then the original placement document had gen ed math, math for elementary ed teachers, and then college algebra. The college algebra has since been removed from that list. At CLC, you can see we have left college algebra at that 530 cutoff. So a couple thoughts went into that process. One, originally, our intermediate algebra and our gen ed math, those were the two courses that were at that 530 cutoff. Well, when the CAO document came in and said that college ready in math was a 530, we couldn't leave a dev ed course at that level. So the intermediate algebra had to be moved to the 510 cutoff. And then our math for elementary ed teachers and the college algebra, that was at the higher 580. So we had to definitely move the math for teachers down to the 530. And then we went back and forth as a department what to do with college algebra. And ultimately we decided that that should go at the 530 level as well. So this is our new placement that we have. And then you can see we left pre-calc at the higher 580 level. When we moved college algebra to that 530 level, you can go ahead and hit enter, Natalia. The college algebra, our success rates in college algebra, to be honest with you, they were really bad. And we were afraid that by opening access and having the lower cut score, that we were just setting up our college algebra students for failure, and that we would put a new roundabout in at the college level, college algebra level. So we toyed with the idea of having a co-requisite for those students that were in the bubble between 530 and 580. But because of our dismal success rates overall in college algebra, we decided that everyone would benefit by having a little extra review. So we added a credit hour to our college algebra class. So our college algebra went from 4 credits to 5 credits. And the idea that with that extra credit hour, we would build in some just-in-time review. So the idea wasn't that at the start of college algebra that we would suddenly cram in 1 to 2 weeks of intermediate algebra review. Instead, we would build it in. So when we hit a new topic that required some review, we would do it then. So for example, when I teach log and exponential equations, I spend some time reviewing some basic algebra skills for solving linear equations, and then I'll also review exponential laws. So, and then we implemented this starting in the summer of 2019. Natalia?
Right. Of course, when we first started looking at our developmental sequence, we wanted to know who was taking these courses, specifically in intermediate algebra. So we asked our research department to give us the breakdown for the students who placed into college level gen ed math, but enrolled in intermediate algebra instead. We discovered in the previous 9 semesters that over 74% of these students were associate art students. We were shocked to discover that these AA students were taking a developmental math course when the goal of intermediate algebra was designed for the STEM path. The success rate of these AA students in intermediate algebra were below 50%. They became stuck in the roundabout of developmental math, or they left CLC without an AA credential. As you can see, we questioned and researched why these AA students took Dev Ed Math. And again, we're looking at this timeline of self-reflection. So we're here in March. And specifically in that March timeframe, CLC attended the American Association of Community College Pathway Regional Workshop in Chicago, which focused on self-reflection. Our department saw that we created a bottleneck with how we advised students. In our catalog, other advising tools, and the math department created advising documents as well, and they all stated that intermediate algebra was the best course for students because it opened the most pathways. And I know that this picture is hard to read, but this is a flow chart that we had in our catalog that highlights intermediate algebra as the start of these different pathways. And so no wonder why we had so many AA students who qualified for Gen Ed Math taking our developmental math courses. And Shyam is going to continue with our timeline.
So with all of this in mind, the modifications we were going to make to college algebra anyway, and the look at where our students were actually going, they were ending up in this intermediate algebra, even though they were supposed to be taking Gen Ed Math for their AA degree, we started to form this concept of a Gen Ed Math pathway. Go ahead. So we started by looking at where our CLC students were. We requested information on the most popular subplans at the College of Lake County. So these are basically like majors for us. And of the top 9 transfer subplans listed here, it turns out that all but one of them were AA degrees, except for my own Department of Computer Science. The most popular choices were business, psychology, criminal justice, pre-med education, accounting, art, and social work. So these are all AA subplans, and all of them required just one Gen Ed math course to earn that credential. So at the College of Lake County, we have 3 Gen Ed math courses available. A student can choose any one of them to satisfy the credential. We have Math 140, 141, and 142. Kind of working my way backwards here. 142 is a subset of our business statistics course, which is a 4-credit hour. Our Gen Ed classes are all only 3 credit hours. So Gen Ed Stats is a 3-credit hour pared down version of that business stats version. It's popular among students that are looking at things like sociology, where they might be using statistics to talk about their field. And then we have quantitative literacy, fairly common class at a lot of institutions, talks about things, a little bit of statistics there as well, some financial mathematics, some modeling going on there. And then we have our contemporary math class, which is envisioning some exposure to modern mathematics, stuff that a lot of students don't get to see when they're coming up through high school, just the traditional algebra classes. So we get the chance that instructors get to pick from a list of topics. They have the chance to pick from game theory, graph theory, some work with logic, some modern geometry. So it actually, all three of these classes are, I can say, really fun to teach. They're well regarded among students, and they give the chance for students to really explore things they haven't seen before. And with that, we started to shift our gateway. So we took advantage of a couple of things. First, we said, well, it turned out that at the College of Lake County, like was mentioned earlier, we had a lot of multiple measures. And one of them was that we already accepted, so this wasn't a change we made, but we already accepted a C or better in approved high school algebra 1 and 2. So if a student had this on their transcript and it was from a school that we had already checked over and approved their curriculum, if they had a C or better in algebra 1 or 2 and a basic algebra readiness that they met, for example, an ACT or SAT, ACT of 17, I think is basic algebra readiness. So if they met those criteria, which a lot of students did already, they were able to get into one of these gen ed math courses. So that was already true. That was what Natalia was talking about when she said that students were taking intermediate algebra, but they already qualified for the gen ed math. So we had this in place. And then the other thing that we noticed was we learned that the gen ed math course was already accepted as a prerequisite, a little bit behind the scenes, not necessarily always advertised, but the gen ed math course was accepted as a prerequisite for intro courses in a lot of other fields. So intro biology, chemistry, physics, computer science, accounting. They were accepting one of these introductory math courses as a prerequisite to get into their course. So with all of that combined, we put this together, the college algebra, the gen ed math, the easy access to the gen ed math, and we formed what we call the gen ed math pathway. We were able to shift the gateway to gen ed math by making it the prerequisite for college algebra. This became effective in the fall of 2019. So the idea would be that a student who could take gen ed math, and if that's all they needed for their AA degree, they'd be one and done, great. They're able to get that credential and graduate, not stuck on that roundabout. Or if they wanted to transfer to another track, they wanted to go into something that required more mathematics, college algebra being the starting point for a lot of those, we would allow them into college algebra if they completed one of these gen ed math courses. We thought this would be a good entry point. Go ahead, Natalia. We thought this gen ed math would be a good valid entry point for college algebra and for this majority of AA students because, well, for the AA students, it would just be one and done. And for everyone else in general, the idea is, well, they've already been approved, for example, by taking the Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. So they've seen the algebra before, right? It's not like they've never been exposed to the algebra skills. As well, they are taught a variety of things in the gen ed math course that make it, I think, unique and teach a level of grit and problem solving. So these courses cover a lot of different topics. Instructors are encouraged to bring in applications. The textbooks tend to already include a lot of real world applications, just the nature of the topics included. They teach a lot of soft skills. Instructors are allowed to use cross-discipline projects. And we think that students come out of it with a greater understanding about how to reason quantitatively, right? So they're not necessarily just spending the whole semester pushing symbols, learning formulas. The emphasis is on interpretation and critical thinking and being exposed to new topics. So when they come in as a college student, they have to learn to be a college student. This is often the first class for our college students and first math class. So as opposed to intermediate algebra, which they've already seen before, so it's not really new for them. They may not know how to do it, but it's not new. This is usually new for a lot of students, one of these classes. So they successfully getting through it, we think shows something about their ability to get through a college math class and building that grit. So students who successfully complete the gen ed math can go on to take college algebra. That's this idea of this pathway. or one of those variety of introductory courses where it was already accepted. So now we have this gateway where they have a lot of options if they finish this one Gen Ed math course. And that one Gen Ed math course is very, very accessible. We have a lot of ways of getting in to that course through our multiple measures. And if those students take that college math course, that Gen Ed math course, and they successfully complete it, they have the ability to earn a credential. So if they're on the track for one of those AA degrees, they've got it, they're completed, they're ready to walk at commencement, and they don't feel the pressure to go back to a Dev Ed course. What we had done with our advising documents earlier before reforming it was we were encouraging people, especially undecided students, to end up in intermediate algebra as a way of increasing their options, but it really sort of did the opposite. It took away options from them. They got stuck there. I'll hand it over to Donna now.
Might help if I unmute. Okay. You may recall seeing the flowchart that Natalia showed you, where we had intermediate algebra on the top of just about every pathway. So this new flowchart we created takes a different approach. We are trying to have all of our advisement that happens at the college start with what is the path the student wants. Do they want an AA degree? Are they math for elementary ed? Are they an elementary ed person? Do they want business transfer? Do they want STEM? And then go from there to, okay, what college level math class do they need? And then working through all of our multiple measures, trying to find where the student would start. So you can see that kind of big blue blob there at the bottom is Gen Ed math. And we have arrows to all of the other pathways through the Gen Ed math. And obviously a student can place higher. So wherever they start on their path, that's where they would start. But Gen Ed math is a way that they can branch into other areas if they need to. We also have the PMGE class for students who actually don't place into Gen Ed math right away. And then we feel like students do have a good likelihood in 1 year to even if they start in PMGE, to finish that and then take their Gen Ed math class in their second semester. So this is our new advisement flowchart. So this resulted in something we had to do in our department. It's a major culture change at our college because everyone at our college was so focused on intermediate algebra being the class that would give the students the most options. And we needed to change that culture. So we started with our administrators. We actually had the college president in a math department meeting and kind of unfolded our pathway to her. We then moved on to the counselors and the advisors, trying to get them to understand what we were trying to do and to get some buy-in from them because they're the ones who do the most of the advising at the college. And then we also talked to those pathway faculty, those biology folks and chemistry and accounting. And we discovered that a lot of them didn't even know that students could get into their introductory class through a Gen Ed math class. So we kind of highlighted, hey, did you know that you accept this as meeting your prereq? And are you okay with us highlighting that existing prerequisite that you have? So that was a little tougher conversations, but eventually they're like, okay, we're gonna go with that. So we then, again, with the counselors and advisors, told them, you know, if a student says I'm a psychology major, I need this bio class, that's why I want to take 108. We can say, hey, did you know Gen Ed math serves for the psychology degree as well as meeting the prereq for the bio that you need for psychology. Okay, so then in the summer of 19, this is where things really started going fast paced. We were so excited about this Gen Ed pathway idea. We wanted to get the word out to students right away. We had an advertising campaign, we had posters in the bathrooms, email, blast to students. We had the advisors and counselors actually calling students and emailing students. If they found a student that met the prereq for a gen ed math, but yet were enrolled in dev ed math, they tried to talk to them of why and explaining the pathway and hopefully changing their enrollment into a gen ed math class. So lots of communication to students. And then in the fall of 2019, we did a presentation in front of all of the faculty at CLC to explain what it is that we were trying to do, to offer to meet with individual departments to talk through what their catalog said and their math requirements that were listed. And we did that. We met with many, many groups of faculty. We even met with some of the career faculty like medical imaging. And it was really exciting to have faculty come on board and make some changes in their own programs to support this pathway. So it was truly an all college cultural shift. And then you might be wondering, how is your initial data? So I'm going to pass it on to Laura, who's going to talk about our data.
All right, so we're excited to share our initial data. So this is from fall 2018. So this is the same pie chart that Donna had up in the beginning. And you'll remember we had about half of our students enrolled every semester in developmental education. And then go ahead to fall 2019. So here, remember in summer of 2019 is when we opened up more access to college algebra. We had the cut score that went from 580 to 530 from SAT. And then we also, the counselors and advisors were also making those phone calls to those students who were AA students, registered in developmental ed, but had met the prereq for gen ed math. And they did some on the spot counseling with them and said, hey, do you know you can kill two birds with one stone? You can get your math credential and you can meet the prereq for your bio or chem class. So, and that was huge support from administration when we met with them. You know, they're the ones that okayed the counselors and advisors putting in all that extra time calling those students. So we really had buy-in across the college. So you can see our dev ed rate dropped from 50% to 30%, and our college level math increased again because I believe we opened that access to college algebra, and then our gen ed math rate went up. And then this is what happened in fall of 2020. Our dev ed rate then went from just about 50% down to 21%. I think even we were shocked by the huge decrease in a number of students that are taking developmental ed because of this. And a third of our classes are now gen ed math classes. And you can see that the number of students who are enrolling in college level math is continuing to increase. And again, that's partially due to the increase in access through the lower cut scores, as well as the pathway back to STEM. If a student takes a gen ed math class, they can transition back to STEM or business through college algebra. And now I know you want, okay, that's great, but what did that do to your success rates? So we don't have a lot of data, of course, since we just started at summer 2019, but here is the last 4 years. On the left is the gen ed math success rates, and then on the right are the college algebra. So from the gen ed math, you can see a little variability, but there is no significant statistical difference in our pass ratios there. On the right-hand side is the most recent. And then the college algebra, at least for the last 2 years, that's where there's no significant statistical difference. You can see the blue, which is the 2016-17. I mean, I'm embarrassed that this is up here. Our success rate in college algebra, less than 40%. And then the last 2 years, remember, that's when we opened the access, but we also included that extra credit hour in college algebra. And we believe that really helped increase our success rates there. Just having that just-in-time review is making a huge difference to our students. So we're really excited about the initial results. Natalia?
All right. What are our expectations with this gen ed math pathway? And First, we are expecting a full implementation of transitional math in our district to further reduce the number of students taking developmental math at CLC. Currently, there are 21 high schools offering transitional math in our county. So what are we expecting in fall of 2021? We are expecting that 21% pie slice that Laura highlighted to even be slimmer. So we're excited about that. Secondly, we also expect more students to complete Gen Ed math to increase the overall college graduation rate. Since they are now off that roundabout in developmental math in intermediate algebra, which does not give them any credential for an associate in arts or in any other degree, since it's a developmental class. Now that we shifted this gateway, we want to see this increase, or we hoping to see the increase of overall college graduation rate. And this aligns with CLC's goal of increasing graduation rate and reducing the number of students in developmental education.
So suffice to say, we have been thrilled with these results. We've opened up access, reduced the number of students in Dev Ed, and we haven't seen a great drop in success. As Laura pointed out, if anything, with college algebra, we've seen a little bit of increase in success. So all of this has gone pretty well in our initial data. It's still initial data, but we're very, 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 very thrilled. And we've gotten a lot of support from our administration, a lot of pats on the back. So we're quite happy with this, but that's what we've done. And we certainly have more work to do. So next steps for the Gen Ed math pathway in our math department related to this. We are very interested in gathering some more disaggregated data on how our Gen Ed math pathway is affecting our students with a lens towards equity, right? This is a big topic for all of us across the country, certainly in our state, certainly in our institution, and it is going to be a focus for us moving forward. We've committed to that we want to make sure we have that lens on equity in everything that we do. We want to make sure that these success rates are success rates for all students. And we want to, towards that end, integrate department-wide faculty professional development. So rather than just a few faculty here and there going and attending sessions and learning more about equitable best practices and things like that, we'd really like to bring it to the department. We've committed to having time in our department meetings, and we're really trying to make sure that the entire department together goes on this journey. And we've also implemented with the college's support, with our administrative support, some lead teachers for these new high impact gateway classes. So our Gen Ed math and our college algebra are now our high enrollment, high impact classes. And so we think they need some extra support, some extra guidance, some extra thought. And so we've established these lead teachers, some roles for faculty within our department. So faculty were selected, and each one will more or less shepherd these courses, think about best practices, share with other instructors that are teaching those courses about what we should do with those courses to get those kinds of success rates, increase those success rates, and increase them in an equitable way. We have challenges, no doubt. This is going to put a great strain on staffing for our department, already has. With that huge change in our pie, our distribution, as far as what courses we are now seeing enrollments in, what courses then we have to offer. We're predominantly offering Gen Ed math and college algebra and other college level math courses, which means our current pool of adjuncts is going to be not capable of covering those classes. A lot of them don't have the credentials to cover those classes. So we definitely have to address that. That's going to be a concern structurally moving forward. So all of these are thoughts of things that we're going to keep an eye on, but we're very, very, very happy with the results we've seen so far. So thank you very much. Yeah, we open it up. Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to discuss? There's our email addresses. If you want to reach out to any of us about what we have done or how we did it, or what we think about it, we're happy to discuss this and share our thoughts. Any questions? I didn't see any in the chat or anything.
I actually have a quick question.
Yes.
So you're still offering intermediate algebra, but I assume just like a lot fewer sections.
Exactly right.
Have you specifically compared the success rates of students in your college algebra class, those that came via intermediate algebra versus those that came via the gen ed math? Have you specifically compared the success rates versus comparing those 2 points of entry?
I can take that one. No, we have not pulled that data yet. That is one of the things we're going to look at. We really just have, well, I guess the only thing we could have gotten was the fall 2020 from that. And we weren't sure that we had enough students because so that went into play in fall 2020, the gen ed, but most students had, sorry, let me try and speak. So most students would have taken the gen ed math in fall of 2020, and then they would have taken the college algebra in spring of the next year, or I'm sorry, fall of 2019, and then spring of 2020. So, which again was the start of the pandemic, which is also going to skew our data for a little bit. So we haven't pulled that yet, but that is one of the things we're going to look at.
Okay, thank you.
There have been a couple of requests in the chat for the PowerPoint slides. So can they email one of you to get the copy of the PowerPoint?
Would it be easier to send it to you so that you can put it on the IMACC website? Or, I mean, I could also see if I can drop it in the chat as well here.
I believe so. You can send it to me, and maybe I can have them put a link next to the session in the schedule or something.
Linda's asking about our course syllabi for gen ed math. So we have 3 different courses, and as is currently structured, we prepare a student for college algebra. Again, I think what we want to emphasize here is that no, these gen ed math courses do not cover algebra per se. They're not there to cover factoring and things like that. Our hypothesis and what we are encouraged by based on our success rates so far is that taking the gen ed math course, having already taken some algebra in high school, at least passing that, means that these students will be prepared to get into this college algebra course with the extra credit hour, with the just-in-time review, and be able to pass that course successfully. So it's not so much that our gen ed math courses have topics that address college algebra topics. It is that we think that it builds the kind of mathematical thinking, college thinking, exposure to being in college classes, in a college math environment, building those soft skills, building that grit that will allow them to pass our college algebra with that extra credit hour added.
Can you talk a little bit about that extra credit hour and how it's integrated into the college algebra class? Is it a separate meeting time, or is it just more time within
I can
the
take
algebra
that
class?
one. It is not a co-req where you would think of only certain students take it. This is for all of our college algebra students. So we added the credit hour for the whole course, and then we've reorganized some topics, and we've put in some intermediate algebra topics in a just-in-time approach. So we actually start the class in sequences and series. So that is just really crazy, but our thought process was students that come to college and start seeing, oh, here's a review of factoring. Off they tune, and they're like, I've seen that all before, been there, done that. Where if you do something interesting and new, that they might be more engaged. So then we've put the intermediate algebra topics in a just-in-time place. So for example, before you go and do rational functions, we may do some simplifying of rational expressions. Okay, so that would be a just-in-time versus having it all front-loaded. Natalia, do you have our outline of college algebra ready to share or no? All right, so here's our course outline for the college algebra. So you can see we start in sequences. So there's very little review in the first chapter. And then we do a little bit of review before we do some comic sections, and then a little more review before we do some functions. And the intermediate algebra topics are really peppered in here when we need them. So it doesn't just overload a student with, oh, I've seen this all before, I'm going to tune out. So that is our theory that we are operating under in our college algebra class. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
Julius was asking in the chat about why we were having challenges with staffing. Wouldn't any math teacher be qualified to teach? And one of our math chairs is on the session, John Sprague, and he answered this in the chat that we require an instructor to have a master's in math or math ed to teach gen ed math. And we were talking about this offline earlier, that our understanding is that some of these credentials are required by the Higher Learning Commission as far as a college credit math class. So that there's only so much flexibility we have as far as staffing those gen ed math. And then another one of our chairs is here. A lot of CLC people here. Staff may also have 18 grad math credits with a master's in a related field. Thank you. But still, many of our adjuncts don't meet these credentials. So that's certainly a challenge. I think I saw, is that all the questions in the chat? Anybody see any others?
Usually I can put a file in the chat, but it's not letting me, so I would also attach it. But I will send that to Roger, also the topics in our college algebra, so the PowerPoint and that as well.
Yes, and again, I'll try to get those posted near the schedule of the conference so that it'd be easy to find. All right, I think we have run out of questions. So again, thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting and extremely well attended too. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for coming to the IMACC virtual conference this year. And hope to see you all next year on site at Allerton for another wonderful conference. So everyone enjoy the rest of your day and have a good weekend.
Thank you very much.